Okay, for several months now, I've put this off and put this off, and I've decided that today is the day. If I look at my watch, it's January the 20th of 2025, and this is episode one of Double Helix. The idea behind Double Helix really comes down to a couple of things. Number one, how important our connections are with the world around us. Not only the social connections that we have, but also how those connections actually can have an effect overall on our health, from social to psychological to mental health. And as well, how does the DNA interact with us to be able to have an effect on our health as well? And that ties into some of those other areas. So, what I'm hoping to do over the next several months is to be able to bring in some experts. I am not the expert. If anything, I am the least educated person in these areas, but I feel it important to be able to find some individuals that can kind of shed some light on how those connections can best help us. And also kind of intermixed in with that, to be able to have guests on the show that actually will share how the connections that they had, whether it is a social connection, whether whatever it is, and how that helped them get through or work on whatever they were trying to do. Now, I'll be honest. First of all, I am not the master at connections. Um, I do a great job in my work. I'm out there, I'm a sales guy, so I'm out in front of people all day long, and I can connect really well one on one with somebody or in large groups. I've been a paid public speaker over the years, so I've had the opportunity to be able to connect with rooms full of people. However, often where I tend to struggle is where we get into those family connections. With our kids and with my wife and I, things are pretty good there. They're never as good as we would want them. But when you get to the beyond that, uh, my mother refers to me sometimes as her hermit son, which, go figure, it means I can actually kind of just go quiet for a long time. I'm not certain, even if I lived across the street from her, if she would still refer to me as that at times. And I don't always say or do the right things with my siblings. Now, I will tell you right off that I have come from a family with four brothers, number two of five guys. And so there's some dynamics there, obviously, and it ranges in, age ranges quite a bit between the five of us. And then with my wife and I, and we have our boys, and very, very different lifestyles and things like that. I'm not going to dive into the ins and outs, the intricacies of my immediate family and all that, because that is something that's private, and we want to make certain that I honor those people that are not here with me, so that they don't feel in any way that there's something at jeopardy. So as we go through the episodes, one thing that you will notice is I want to be as real as possible. There'll be very, very little editing. I want it to be something where you're just seeing how it is. When we bring a neurologist on and he talks about how the nerves connect and all that really kind of sciencey stuff, as well as psychologists and nutritionists and all these individuals that actually can tie the connection into our health and well-being. Those conversations that we have with them will just be raw, and we'll be able to cover a lot of material, and so as well as the conversations with those individuals. So some of the things that I have found that are really important when it comes to connections, we talk about our mental well-being, our emotional well-being, and our physical well-being, as well as, you know what? I guess those are the three things that pretty much cover it all. I was going to keep talking about how mental, and then I realized mental and psychological were that tie in together. And so there's a lot of things that I think are really, really important that we can share and we can talk about. Now, it was interesting not too long ago, just to kind of step right in, and I'm just going to kind of share an open book about myself. I will tell you that um, I have, man, I've put my foot in my mouth at times, and I've closed the door on relationships, and I have. Um, it's as kind as I want to be, and I feel like I am most of the time. There are times that I cannot be, and that actually affects those connections that I have. And I'm hoping through this process that we'll do that. Um, Not only help me, but like I mentioned before, it will help you as well. And so, one of the things that I think is going to be really important is just to tell a little bit of stories. I'm a huge storyteller, and so you'll hear quite a bit of different stories over time from me. So, one of the things that I think is really important, and I'll just share a story from my own life about the importance of having a connection with an individual. So, really, if I look back and I think about this individual and the connection that they had with my wife and myself. So I'm closing my eyes because I'm visualizing and thinking about this individual. Um, about 18 years ago, I was in a pretty bad accident, and I fell 40 feet and landed on my feet like I jumped. Removing some trees, chainsaw damaged the harnessing. The harnessing failed, and so I fell. When I was in the hospital, one thing that I learned initially was, as we all know, we just can't judge a book by its cover or how things. And we've heard all those little sayings of, you got to give people a chance and stuff. But when they took me to the hospital after they did the first surgery and they stabilized me, and I was pretty broken up, you can imagine with a 40-foot fall. And that next day, the orthopedic trauma surgeon comes in and he's talking to us. And initially, he was standing with pretty much with maybe I could remember him wrong. There was a lot of drugs going on at that time, but it seemed like he was standing against the wall, kind of back a little bit. His arms were folded, um, and he basically said we had to decide whether we were going to amputate one of my legs. That we may have some hard decisions to make. And I remember thinking when he went out, I thought, man, I don't like this guy. And we just barely met him, and he's saying, hey, you got to have all these hard decisions, and there was no emotion behind it. But what I found is that he actually had his game face on. He knew how bad things were with one of my legs, and over time he was so patient and kind and was able to make connections. I still remember the day that I'm laying in this hospital bed, and and the gravity of what had happened really kind of weighed on me. Um, I was a guy that, I was getting ready to go on an archery hunt. I was pretty active outdoors. I loved hiking and I loved fishing and I loved all these things that involved my legs. And I was no longer going to have that option to do those things. Um, at that point, I couldn't even move my left arm. My left arm just sagged at my side because it had been hurt in the accident. And of course, now I can move it. So, yay for me. Anyway, as I'm laying there and the gravity of it all, the only thing that didn't get injured was my right hand, was my right arm, and my back. I didn't have any back injury, but it was just legs and arm. And I'm sitting here, and I just remember he this particular surgeon came in, and he would say every time he'd visit with you, he'd always have finish his visit with the exact same phrase. And I'm sure he did this with everybody, but he did it with me, and it was, do you have any areas of questions or concerns that you need me to answer before I go? And previous to that, I'm like, no, no, no. But this particular day, as it really hit me hard. And I just sat in that hospital bed and wept and just poured my soul out. And just, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm going through. And he just sat there and listened. And in that process, when we were done with when he was done hearing me just sob and struggle, he asked if he could have someone come help me through that. And fortunately, it because he was able to build that trust and connection between he and I, it altered the course um, of probably of my healing. It altered the course of really the relationship with my wife and I. I was so internal looking at just myself and realizing that this had happened to her as well. And so when I look at somebody who had a great impact because of he worked to make a connection with me, I don't know as the years went on, as I went and saw him in follow up visits, I don't know if he was ever on time to see me. But I also knew that he took such great care of me that if he was doing that with others, I was okay to be waiting in the lobby. We never know the connections that we have. You never know when you can have that effect on somebody else or touch that person in a way that could help them in any innumerable ways. And so the focus of this podcast is going to be on that. I think it's so important that we find ways that we can connect one with another and be able to make it so that we are able to help each other throughout the process, whatever struggles we're in. But even if it's just not helping others, even if it's just I am working on, I need to get healthy, I need to be better. So how does having connections, and what kind of connections do I need to focus on, and how do those connections have an effect in all of that? That's going to be our focus. And so connection in itself is not just a social need; it's an essential component to our overall well-being. And so I'm looking forward to spending some time with you and bringing some people in. If you have any questions at all or whatever and want to jump in and have some conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to see what we can do to um, get you to chat with us. We'd love to hear from you.